Cast out and ignored, humans returned as masters of the galaxy. The Galactic Council chambers hummed with the voices of 1,000 different species. Representatives from across the known galaxy gathered in the massive crystalline structure that orbited the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Today's agenda contained only one item that truly mattered to the assembled delegates: the final vote on humanity's fate. Ambassador Kethler of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the central podium, his forearms gesturing dramatically as he addressed the crowd. His silver skin gleamed under the artificial lighting, and his compound eyes reflected the faces of every delegate present. Fellow beings of the galaxy, his voice carried through the translation matrices, we stand at a crossroads. The human question has plagued our peaceful union for too long. In the human delegation section, Ambassador Sarah Chen sat perfectly still. Her hands remained folded in her lap, though her knuckles had turned white from the pressure. Beside her, Admiral Marcus Torres watched the proceedings with the calm expression of a career military officer who had seen too much to be surprised by betrayal. The third member of their delegation, Dr. Elena Vasquez, frantically scribbled notes on her datapad, documenting every word for the historical record. The Zephyrian continued his speech, his voice growing more passionate with each word. For 300 years, humans have been members of our Galactic Council. In that time, they have contributed nothing but violence, territorial disputes, and an alarming tendency toward what they call innovation. Their latest proposal to explore beyond the galactic rim shows their dangerous disregard for established boundaries and peaceful coexistence. A rumble of agreement swept through the chamber. The crystalline collective, beings of pure silicon who communicated through harmonic frequencies, chimed their approval. The ethereal dominion, creatures of energy who barely maintained physical form, flickered in patterns that their translators interpreted as enthusiastic consent. Ambassador Chen finally stood, her voice cutting through the noise. Honored delegates, we request the right to respond to these accusations. Keithalar's compound eyes focused on her with what humans might interpret as contempt. The human delegation has already presented their case. The time for debate has ended. We proceed to the vote. The voting process was swift and brutal. Of the 1,047 member species present, only 12 voted in favor of allowing humanity to remain in the Galactic Council. These 12 were younger species, recently admitted to the Council themselves, who perhaps remembered what it felt like to be judged and found wanting. The final tally appeared in holographic displays throughout the chamber: 1,135 votes for expulsion, 12 against. The required two-thirds majority had been achieved with room to spare. Admiral Torres leaned toward Ambassador Chen and whispered, "I told you this was coming. We should have prepared for this day." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her notes, her eyes bright with unshed tears. 3 centuries of partnership, of shared knowledge, of fighting alongside these people against common threats. "And this is how it ends?" Kethlar raised his primary arms for silence. "The Galactic Council has spoken. Humanity is hereby expelled from this body, effective immediately. All human territories beyond your original solar system are to be evacuated within 1 standard galactic year. All Council technology provided to human worlds must be returned or destroyed. Humanity will be restricted to the Sol system and forbidden from expanding beyond it." The chamber erupted in celebration. Species that had barely spoken to each other in decades now embraced in their shared victory over the human menace. Ambassador Chen watched it all with the expression that revealed nothing of her inner thoughts. As the 3 humans prepared to leave, Chen finally spoke to her companions. "They think they've solved a problem today. They have no idea what they've actually done." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks aboard their diplomatic vessel, the UNS Harmony. The ship had been a gift from the Galactic Council 50 years earlier, a gesture of friendship and cooperation. Now it would likely be the last human ship to travel the galaxy's hyperspace lanes legally. During the voyage, the 3 humans spent their time planning for humanity's future. Admiral Torres contacted fleet commanders across human space, quietly passing along coded messages about contingency plans that had been decades in the making. Dr. Vasquez compiled detailed reports on every species they had encountered, their technologies, their weaknesses, and their political structures. Ambassador Chen composed her final report to the United Earth government. "We always knew this day might come. Torres said as they sat in the ship's observation deck, watching the stars streak past in hyperspace. The older species never trusted us. They saw our rapid expansion, our military capabilities, our refusal to accept limitations, and they feared us. Fear, Chen replied thoughtfully. Yes, that's exactly what this was about. Not our supposed violence or our exploration beyond the rim. They were afraid of what humanity might become if left unchecked. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her data pad. The irony is that they've just guaranteed we'll become exactly what they feared. By cutting us off from the galaxy, by forcing us back into isolation, they've removed every incentive we had to play by their rules. As Earth grew larger in their viewports, Admiral Torres smiled for the first time since the vote. Let them enjoy their victory. Let them think they've neutered the human threat. In a generation or two, when they've forgotten about us entirely, they'll discover just how wrong they were. The UNS Harmony docked at Luna Station 3 days later. News of the expulsion had already reached Earth through quantum communication arrays, and the planet was in uproar. Protests filled the streets of major cities, demanding military action against the Galactic Council. Politicians gave speeches about human dignity and the injustice of their treatment. But in the secure levels of the Unity Government building in Geneva, a different kind of meeting was taking place. President Harrison Okafor sat at the head of a table surrounded by the most powerful humans in the solar system. Military commanders, research directors, industrial leaders, and intelligence operatives all waited for his words. Ambassador Chen stood to address the group. The deed is done. Humanity has been cast out of the Galactic Council and forbidden from expanding beyond Sol. We have 1 year to withdraw from all our colonies beyond this system. The room erupted in angry voices, but President Okafor raised his hand for silence. How long? He asked simply. Admiral Torres understood the question immediately. The Prometheus project can be accelerated. Give us 20 years, maybe 25. The new drive systems will be ready by then. And the other projects? Dr. Vasquez consulted her notes. Genetic enhancement programs are ahead of schedule. The artificial intelligence research is yielding promising results. We can have everything ready within the same time frame. President Okafor nodded slowly. Then we have work to do. The galaxy has chosen to cast us out and ignore us. Let them. In a generation, humanity will return to claim what should have been ours all along. 22 years had passed since humanity's expulsion from the Galactic Council. The Sol system had become a fortress, hidden behind layers of advanced technology that made it invisible to the galaxy's sensors. What the other species didn't know was that humanity had never truly left the galaxy. They had simply learned to hide. Captain Lisa Park stood on the bridge of the UNS Phantom, watching through the main view screen as her ship emerged from what appeared to be empty space. The new stealth technology made their vessels completely undetectable to any scanning system the Galactic Council possessed. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their enhanced reflexes and improved cognitive abilities allowing them to process information faster than any baseline human could have managed. Tactical report, Captain Park ordered, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been bred and trained for command from birth. Lieutenant Commander Zhang, whose genetic modifications included enhanced pattern recognition and tactical analysis capabilities, studied his displays. We're in the Kepler 442 system, Captain. Long-range sensors show significant Zephyrian military presence. 3 battle groups, approximately 40 vessels total. And they have no idea we're here, Park said with satisfaction. The Phantom was one of 50 ships in the new Wraith-class fleet, vessels that represented 20 years of focused human innovation. They were faster, more powerful, and more advanced than anything the Galactic Council had ever produced. Dr. James Morrison, the ship's chief science officer, looked up from his station. Like all humans of his generation, he had been enhanced both genetically and cybernetically. Neural implants allowed him to interface directly with the ship's systems, while genetic modifications had increased his intelligence and processing speed far beyond baseline human norms. Captain, I'm reading something unusual from the Zephyrian ships. Their energy signatures are fluctuating in a pattern I've never seen before. Park walked over to Morrison's station, her movements precise and controlled. The enhancement programs had produced a generation of humans who were stronger, faster, and smarter than their predecessors. but they had also been trained from childhood to maintain perfect discipline and emotional control. Elaborate, Doctor. Morrison's fingers danced across his console, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to input commands faster than the computer could process them. It appears they're conducting some kind of experiment. The energy patterns suggest they're testing a new type of weapon system. This was exactly the kind of intelligence-gathering mission that the Phantom had been designed for. For over 2 decades, human stealth ships had been monitoring Galactic Council activities, gathering data on their technological developments, their military capabilities, and their political situations. What they had discovered was both encouraging and concerning. Encouraging because the galaxy had stagnated in humanity's absence. Without the constant pressure of human innovation pushing them forward, most species had become complacent. Their technology had barely advanced in 20 years. Concerning because some species, particularly the Zephyrians, had become increasingly militant and expansionist. Orders from command are to observe and record, Park reminded her crew. We're not here to engage. But as they watched, the Zephyrian experiment took an unexpected turn. The energy buildup in their experimental weapon reached critical levels, and suddenly one of their own ships exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The other vessels immediately went to high alert, their sensors sweeping space frantically for any sign of an attacker. They think they're under attack, Zhang observed. They have no idea their own weapon malfunctioned. Park watched as the Zephyrian ships began firing randomly into space, their panic evident even across species barriers. Fools. They're so paranoid about external threats that they can't recognize their own incompetence. This was the galaxy that had expelled humanity for being too dangerous, too unpredictable. Now Park could see the truth. They had expelled humanity because they feared competition. Without humans pushing the boundaries of what was possible, the galaxy had become a stagnant pond of mediocrity and mutual suspicion. The communication board chimed softly, indicating an incoming message on a secured quantum channel. Park moved to her command chair and activated the privacy screen. The holographic image of Admiral Sarah Chen appeared before her. Chen had been promoted to head of the Reformed Human Defense Force after her return from the expulsion proceedings. She was now in her 70s, but genetic therapy and life extension treatments kept her as sharp and capable as ever. Captain Park. Report. Admiral, we've been observing Zephyrian military exercises in the Kepler system. Their weapons development appears to be proceeding poorly. One of their experimental ships just destroyed itself during testing. Chen's expression remained neutral, but Park could see the satisfaction in her eyes. Noted. How is the crew performing? Excellently, Admiral. The enhancements are working perfectly. Response times are improved by 40% over baseline humans, and the neural interface systems are operating within normal parameters. Good. You have new orders, Captain. Proceed to the Vega system and observe crystalline collective activities. Intelligence suggests they're developing new defensive technologies. Understood, Admiral. The hologram flickered out, leaving Park alone with her thoughts. She had been 12 years old when humanity was expelled from the galaxy. She remembered the anger, the humiliation, the sense of betrayal that had swept through human space. But she also remembered the determination that had followed. The genetic enhancement programs had been voluntary at first, offered only to those who wanted to serve in the new military forces. But as the benefits became clear, more and more humans chose to undergo the procedures. Enhanced intelligence, improved physical capabilities, extended lifespans, and direct neural interfaces with advanced technology. Within a generation, enhanced humans had become the norm rather than the exception. The artificial intelligence research had progressed even faster. Human scientists, freed from the ethical constraints imposed by Galactic Council oversight, had developed AI systems that were far more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. These AIs didn't just assist humans. They merged with them, creating hybrid intelligences that combined human creativity with machine precision. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Zhang called out, "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth." Park activated the main communication system, and the image of President Marcus Silva appeared on the main screen. Silva was young for a president, barely 40, but he represented the new generation of enhanced humans who had taken control of human government. "Citizens of the Reformed Human Federation," Silva began, his voice being broadcast simultaneously to every human settlement in the solar system. Today marks the 22nd anniversary of our expulsion from the Galactic Council. For 22 years, we have rebuilt ourselves. We have become stronger, smarter, and more united than ever before. Park and her crew listened with rapt attention. They knew what was coming. The time of hiding is ending, Silva continued. Our scouts report that the galaxy has grown complacent and weak in our absence. The species that cast us out now struggle with their own internal conflicts and technological limitations. They have forgotten about humanity, dismissed us as a minor annoyance from their distant past. The president paused, his enhanced eyes seeming to look directly at each viewer. They are about to be reminded that humanity does not forgive, and we do not forget. The galaxy chose to cast us out and ignore us. Now we will show them the consequences of that decision. Humanity is returning to the galaxy, not as supplicants seeking membership in their council, but as masters claiming our rightful inheritance. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Park looked around at her crew, seeing the same mixture of excitement and determination in their faces that she felt in her own enhanced heart. "Well," she said finally, "I suppose our observation mission just became a reconnaissance mission. Helm, set course for Vega system. Maximum stealth. It's time to see what our new galaxy looks like." As the Phantom slipped through space undetected, Park couldn't help but smile. The galaxy had wanted humanity gone, had thought they could simply erase them from galactic politics. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what it needed: time to evolve beyond their wildest expectations. The beings who returned to claim the galaxy would be as far beyond the humans who had been expelled as those humans had been beyond their primitive ancestors. The real question wasn't whether humanity would conquer the galaxy. The question was whether any of the species that had voted for their expulsion would survive to see humanity's ultimate victory. The first sign that something had changed came to the Galactic Council in the form of silence. Trade ships that had been traveling the outer rim routes for decades simply stopped reporting in. At first, the disappearances were dismissed as the usual hazards of space travel. Pirates, engine failures, navigation errors. The galaxy was a dangerous place and ships were lost regularly. But when the UGS Prosperity, a massive Zephyrian cargo vessel carrying rare metals from the mining colonies, vanished without so much as a distress signal, the Council began to take notice. The Prosperity was no ordinary freighter. It was a military transport disguised as a civilian vessel, carrying not just cargo but a full battalion of Zephyrian shock troops and enough weapons to outfit a small army. Admiral Keshatar, who had taken over military command of the Zephyrian Empire after his predecessor's mysterious death in a transport accident, stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council Security Committee. His forearms moved in agitation as he addressed the assembled representatives. "Honored colleagues, we face a crisis unlike any we have seen in over 2 centuries. In the past 3 months, we have lost contact with 17 ships along the outer rim routes. These were not accidents. Our investigation teams have found evidence of weapons fire, but the energy signatures match no known technology in our databases." The representative from the Crystalline Collective, a being called Resonance of Truth, chimed in with harmonic frequencies that the translators converted to words. "Perhaps these are the actions of a previously unknown species. The galaxy is vast and we have not explored every system." Admiral Keshatar's compound eyes focused on the crystal being with obvious frustration. "That is what we thought initially. But our scouts have now discovered something far more disturbing. 3 of our outer colonies have gone completely dark. Not destroyed, not evacuated, simply changed. When our reconnaissance ships arrive, they find the colonies still operational, but the inhabitants claim no knowledge of the Galactic Council or their previous allegiances." A murmur of concern swept through the chamber. The ethereal Dominion representative, a being of pure energy that flickered between various forms, spoke in its echoing voice. "You suggest some form of mind control technology? Such capabilities are forbidden under the Galactic Accords." "The Galactic Accords mean nothing to whoever is doing this," Keshatar replied grimly. "We have attempted to re-establish contact with these colonies, only to be told that they are now under the protection of something called the Reformed Human Federation." The chamber fell into stunned silence. It was Counselor Vexani of the Hegemony Worlds who finally spoke, her crystalline voice cutting through the quiet. "That is impossible. The humans were restricted to their home system over 20 years ago. Our monitoring stations would have detected any attempts to leave Sol. Admiral Keshatar activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy's outer rim. Red dots marked the locations of the missing ships and compromised colonies. Our monitoring stations have detected nothing because they have been watching empty space. Whatever the humans have become, they have developed technology that makes them completely invisible to our sensors. Dr. Irelith, the Council's chief science advisor, stepped forward to examine the display. As a member of the highly advanced Mentarch species, her intellectual capabilities were considered among the highest in the galaxy. Her elongated skull pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as she processed the information. If this is truly human activity, then they have made technological advances far beyond what should be possible in such a short time frame. The species we expelled 22 years ago could not have developed such capabilities. Which brings us to the real question, Admiral Keshatar said darkly. What exactly have the humans become during their exile? The answer to that question was about to become terrifyingly clear. As the Security Committee debated, a single ship appeared at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. It made no attempt to hide its approach, broadcasting on all frequencies with a simple message. The Reformed Human Federation requests permission to address the Galactic Council. The ship itself was unlike anything in the Council's databases. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, giving it an unsettling appearance that hurt to look at directly. Its design incorporated curves and angles that seemed to follow no known principles of engineering, yet sensor readings indicated it was somehow more efficient than any vessel the Council had ever encountered. President Marcus Silva stood alone in the Council chambers, having been granted a hearing under the ancient right of petition that allowed any sapient being to address the Council once. He looked exactly like the humans the galaxy remembered. 2 arms, 2 legs, bipedal stance. But there was something fundamentally different about him that the assembled delegates couldn't quite identify. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Silva began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber without amplification. I come before you today not as a supplicant, but as the representative of humanity's evolved form. 22 years ago, you cast us out of your galaxy, believing you had solved the human problem. Today, I am here to inform you that you have succeeded beyond your wildest expectations. Councillor Vexani rose from her seat, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into rainbow patterns. You were forbidden from leaving your home system. Your presence here is a violation of the exile decree. Silva smiled, and that smile sent chills through every being present. There was something predatory about it, something that spoke of capabilities far beyond what any single human should possess. The beings you exiled no longer exist, he said simply. Baseline humanity was indeed restricted to the Sol system, and those restrictions have been faithfully observed. But the Reformed Human Federation represents something new. We are what humanity became when you forced us to evolve or die. Dr. Irelith stepped forward, her bioluminescent patterns flickering rapidly as she processed this information. Evolution does not work that quickly. Genetic changes take millennia to manifest. Natural evolution, yes, Silva agreed. But you underestimated humanity's greatest strength, our refusal to accept limitations. When you cast us out, you gave us the greatest gift possible. Freedom from your rules, your ethics, your fear of progress. We used that freedom to transcend the limitations of natural evolution. Admiral Keshatar's 4 arms moved in agitation. You speak of genetic modification. Such practices are heavily regulated under Council law. Council law, Silva repeated with amusement. You exiled us from the Council, remember? Your laws no longer apply to us. Over the past 22 years, we have redesigned ourselves from the ground up. Enhanced intelligence, improved physical capabilities, direct neural interfaces with artificial intelligence systems, extended lifespans, and abilities you couldn't even imagine. He gestured, and suddenly the air around him shimmered. For a moment, the delegates could see through his human appearance to something else underneath. Neural implants that glowed with their own light, genetic modifications that had changed his very cellular structure, and technological integrations that blurred the line between organic and artificial. We are no longer merely human, Silva continued. We are post-human, transhuman, something beyond your ability to categorize or control. And we have returned to the galaxy not as the species you remember, but as your inevitable successors. The chamber erupted in alarm. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding explanations, threatening military action, and calling for immediate security measures. But Silva simply stood calmly in the center of the chaos, waiting for them to exhaust themselves. When the noise finally died down, he spoke again. You have already lost 3 colonies to our expansion. Your ships disappear when they enter our space. Your monitoring systems cannot detect our presence until we choose to reveal ourselves. And this is just the beginning. Counselor Vexani's voice cut through the tension. What do you want? Silva's smile widened. Want? We want nothing from you. We are simply informing you of the new reality. The galaxy has a new dominant species, one that you created through your own fear and short-sightedness. The Reformed Human Federation is expanding, and we will continue to expand until we have claimed what should have been ours all along. You speak of conquest, Admiral Keshatar said, his military instincts finally overcoming his shock. We will not allow it. Allow? Silva laughed, and the sound sent shivers through the assembled delegates. You misunderstand your position. This is not a negotiation or a declaration of war. This is simply a notification. Humanity has returned to the galaxy, and we are no longer asking for permission. With that, Silva turned and walked toward the exit. As he reached the chamber doors, he paused and looked back at the stunned delegates. 22 years ago, you voted to cast out and ignore humanity. That decision created us. Everything that follows is the consequence of your choice. We suggest you use whatever time you have left to prepare, because ready or not, the age of post-humanity has begun. The doors closed behind him, leaving the Galactic Council to contemplate the magnitude of their mistake. Outside, Silva's ship departed as silently as it had arrived, but the damage was done. The galaxy's oldest. The hegemony worlds had always prided themselves on being the galaxy's premier military power. Their fleets were legendary, their tactics studied in war colleges across 1,000 systems, and their soldiers considered the finest warriors the galaxy had ever produced. When the Galactic Council called for a military response to the human threat, it was the hegemony that volunteered to lead the assault. Admiral Zaraketh stood on the bridge of the HSS Dominion, the most powerful warship ever constructed by the hegemony. Around her, a fleet of 300 vessels prepared for the jump to hyperspace. The target was Kepler 438b, one of the colonies that had supposedly fallen under human control. The plan was simple: arrive in overwhelming force, destroy any human presence, and re-establish Galactic Council authority. Admiral, called out Tactical Officer Morden, his scaled hide rippling with excitement. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump. Fleet formation is optimal and weapons systems are fully charged. Zaraketh nodded approvingly. The hegemony fleet represented the combined military might of 12 different species, all unified under hegemony command. They had enough firepower to reduce a planet to molten slag if necessary. Initiate jump sequence. Today we remind the galaxy why the hegemony has never lost a war. The fleet entered hyperspace with the confidence of warriors who had never known defeat. What they didn't know was that their every move had been monitored by human stealth vessels since the moment they left port. The Reformed Human Federation had been expecting this response. Captain Lisa Park watched the approaching hegemony fleet from the bridge of the UNS Phantom, which remained completely invisible to their sensors. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the calm efficiency of enhanced humans interfacing directly with their ship's artificial intelligence systems. Analysis complete. Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Zhang, his neural implants glowing softly as he processed data from the ship's AI. 300 vessels, representing the standard hegemony force composition. Their weapons technology is approximately 25 years behind our current capabilities. Their shields and armor might as well be tissue paper. Park nodded. The years of exile had given humanity time to advance far beyond anything the galaxy could imagine. While the council species had stagnated, human technology had leaped forward at an exponential rate. Enhanced human intelligence, combined with advanced artificial intelligence and unlimited research freedom, had produced weapons and defenses that operated on principles the galaxy didn't even understand. "Time to contact?" Park asked. "They'll drop out of hyperspace in 6 minutes, Captain. Admiral Chen's orders are to let them make the first move." 6 minutes later, the Hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation around Kepler 438b. What they found waiting for them defied all expectations. The planet appeared completely normal. Cities glowed on the night side. Orbital installations moved in their regular patterns, and communication traffic indicated normal civilian activity. But hanging in space between the fleet and the planet was a single ship. It was not large by military standards, perhaps a quarter the size of a standard Hegemony cruiser. Its hull was the same light-absorbing black that had characterized President Silva's diplomatic vessel, and its design followed no recognizable engineering principles. Most disturbing of all, it had appeared without triggering any of the fleet's sensors. Admiral Zaraketh stared at the vessel with growing unease. "Tactical, I want a full sensor sweep of that ship. Weapon signatures, power levels, crew complement, everything." Mordune's fingers worked frantically over his console, but his expression grew increasingly confused. "Admiral, our sensors can't penetrate its hull. It's as if the ship is absorbing our scanning beams. I'm reading minimal energy signatures, but the patterns don't match any known technology." Before Zaraketh could respond, her communication officer announced an incoming transmission from the unknown vessel. The view screen activated, revealing a human figure that made the Admiral's blood run cold. The being on the screen looked human at first glance, but closer inspection revealed the disturbing truth. Neural implants were visible beneath transparent sections of skin. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and when she moved, it was with the perfect precision of someone whose reflexes had been enhanced far beyond biological norms. "I am Commander Sarah Voss of the Reformed Human Federation," the figure said, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested cybernetic vocal modifications. "You are trespassing in Federation space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Zaraketh drew herself up to her full height, her forearms spreading in the traditional Hegemony gesture of authority. "I am Admiral Zaraketh of the Hegemony worlds, commanding a fleet of 300 warships. You are a single vessel facing overwhelming odds. Surrender immediately, and we may consider clemency." Commander Voss smiled, and that smile was perhaps the most terrifying thing any of the Hegemony crew had ever seen. "Admiral, you misunderstand the situation. You're not facing a single vessel. You're facing the entire Reformed Human Federation." The space around the Hegemony fleet suddenly came alive with contacts. Ships materialized from apparently empty space, their stealth fields dropping to reveal a force that dwarfed the Hegemony armada. But these were not the massive dreadnoughts and battle cruisers that traditional military doctrine favored. These were sleek, predatory vessels that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. "Impossible," Mordun whispered, his scales shifting to the pale color of fear. "Our sensors showed empty space. Nothing could hide that many ships from our detection grid." Commander Voss's image on the view screen seemed to hear his words. "Your sensors are designed to detect ships built with your technology, using your understanding of physics. We are no longer bound by such limitations." Admiral Zaraketh quickly assessed the tactical situation. The human ships had appeared in perfect formation around the Hegemony fleet, but instead of adopting traditional battle positions, they had arranged themselves in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The formations seemed to fold space around themselves, creating geometric impossibilities that strained the mind to perceive. "All ships, battle stations," Zaraketh commanded. "Target the nearest human vessel and prepare to fire on my command." But as the Hegemony ships powered their weapons, something extraordinary happened. The human vessels began to move in ways that should have been impossible. They didn't accelerate in straight lines or follow predictable vectors. Instead, they seemed to slip between dimensions, appearing and disappearing in bursts of twisted space-time. "Admiral," Mordun called out in panic, "I can't get a targeting lock. They're moving through space in patterns that our computers can't calculate. It's like they're using some form of controlled teleportation." Commander Voss's voice came through the communication system again, but now it seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. "You're correct, of course. When we transcended biological limitations, we also transcended the limitations of conventional physics. Our ships don't just move through space, they reshape it." The demonstration that followed was brief and decisive. The human ships didn't fire energy weapons or launch missiles. Instead, they simply acted. Space around the hegemony vessels began to twist and fold. Ships found themselves suddenly existing in multiple locations simultaneously, their crews experiencing the impossible sensation of being in several places at once. The HSS Dominion, pride of the hegemony fleet, began to experience what could only be described as dimensional fragmentation. Sections of the ship existed in normal space while other sections phased in and out of reality. Crew members found themselves walking through walls that were solid on one side and intangible on the other. "What are they doing to us?" Zaraketh demanded, her voice breaking as she watched her flagship tear itself apart at the quantum level. "We're giving you a choice," Commander Voss replied. "Withdraw now, or experience what happens when beings who have transcended physical limitations decide to stop playing with you." Admiral Zaraketh had commanded fleets for over 30 years. She had fought in a dozen major conflicts and had never retreated from a battle. But as she watched her ships being torn apart by forces she couldn't understand, let alone counter, she realized that she was no longer fighting an enemy she could defeat. "All ships," she commanded, her voice heavy with defeat. "Emergency retreat, full hyperspace jump, maximum distance." The surviving hegemony vessels, their crews traumatized by experiences that violated everything they understood about reality, fled into hyperspace. Behind them, the human ship simply faded back into invisibility, leaving the space around Kepler 438b apparently empty once again. Commander Voss's image appeared one final time on the retreating flagship's view screen. "Tell your council what you saw here today, Admiral. Tell them that humanity has returned and we are no longer the species they remember. The next time you come to our space, we won't be so merciful." As the hegemony fleet limped back toward council space, Admiral Zaraketh sat in her command chair and tried to process what had just happened. The most powerful military force in the galaxy had been defeated without the enemy firing a single shot. The humans hadn't just advanced technologically, they had transcended the very laws of physics that governed. News of the hegemony fleet's catastrophic defeat spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within days, every major species had received detailed reports of what the humans had become. The response was immediate and unanimous. Panic. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of Admiral Zaraketh's return. The great chamber, which had once echoed with confident voices debating the human exile, now filled with fearful whispers and desperate planning. Representatives who had never agreed on anything suddenly found themselves united by terror. Dr. Irileth of the Mentarch stood at the central podium, her elongated skull pulsing with rapid bioluminescent patterns that betrayed her mental state. As the galaxy's foremost expert on xenobiology and technological development, she had been tasked with analyzing the human transformation. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice trembling despite her species' legendary emotional control. "I have completed my analysis of the data recovered from the hegemony encounter. What we face is no longer the species we knew as humanity. They have undergone a transformation so fundamental that they might as well be considered an entirely new form of life." The holographic display activated, showing complex biological and technological schematics that hurt to look at directly. The beings calling themselves the Reformed Human Federation have integrated biological enhancement, artificial intelligence, and what can only be described as dimensional manipulation technology into a single unified entity. They have not simply improved themselves, they have transcended the basic limitations of carbon-based life. Ambassador Kethlar of the Zephyrian Empire rose from his seat, his 4 arms gesturing frantically. "Surely there must be some weakness we can exploit. No species can advance this far without leaving vulnerabilities." Dr. Irileth's bioluminescent patterns shifted to the dark blue of despair. "That is what I hoped to find. Instead, I discovered something far more disturbing. The humans have not just advanced beyond us, they have evolved into something that operates by completely different rules. Their technology manipulates space-time itself. Their biology incorporates elements that should not be able to exist in our universe. They have become, quite literally, beings from a higher dimension." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Resonance of Truth, the crystalline collective representative, finally chimed in with harmonics that carried overtones of fear. "If this is accurate, then conventional warfare is not merely ineffective, it is meaningless. We cannot fight beings who exist partially outside our reality." But it was the representative from the ethereal dominion who spoke the words everyone was thinking. Then we must seek terms. If we cannot defeat them, perhaps we can negotiate some form of coexistence. The suggestion sparked outrage from several delegates, but before the debate could escalate, the chamber's main doors opened with a soft hiss. A figure walked in unannounced, unescorted, and completely unchallenged by the massive security forces that protected the council chambers. It was human in shape, but clearly something more. The being wore no environmental suit despite the chamber's mixed atmosphere environment, suggesting either technological augmentation or biological adaptation beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Its movements were too fluid, too precise, and when it looked around the chamber, its eyes reflected light in patterns that indicated extensive cybernetic enhancement. "My apologies for the interruption," the figure said, its voice carrying easily through the vast space without amplification, "but I couldn't help but overhear your discussion about terms and coexistence." Security forces throughout the chamber raised their weapons, but the being made no threatening moves. Instead, it simply stood in the center of the chamber and smiled. "I am Director Marcus Joe of the Reformed Human Federation's Integration Department. I've come to offer you exactly what you were discussing, terms for coexistence." Ambassador Kethlar sputtered in indignation. "How dare you enter this sacred chamber? How did you bypass our security systems?" Director Joe's smile widened, revealing teeth that gleamed with metallic augmentations. "Your security systems are designed to detect and stop threats from your level of reality. I simply walked through dimensions your technology cannot perceive." The casual way he stated this sent chills through every delegate present. The humans weren't just more advanced. They were operating on a completely different level of existence. "What terms do you offer?" Counselor Vexani asked, her crystalline voice carefully controlled. Joe gestured, and suddenly the air around him filled with holographic displays showing star maps, resource distributions, and population centers across the galaxy. But these weren't ordinary displays. They seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, showing layers of information that conventional technology couldn't produce. "The Reformed Human Federation is prepared to offer most council species a choice," Joe began. "You may maintain your current territories and governments under our protection, provided you accept certain modifications to your status." Dr. Irileth stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "What modifications?" "Nothing dramatic," Joe assured her. "Simply acknowledgement of human supremacy, cessation of all independent military activities, and acceptance of our guidance in technological and social development." Think of it as a benevolent guardianship. The chamber erupted in outrage. Delegates shouted over each other, demanding to know what gave humanity the right to claim dominion over species that had existed for millions of years, before humans even evolved. Joe waited patiently for the noise to subside, then spoke again. "What gives us the right is simple: we can. 22 years ago you cast us out because you feared what we might become. Well, you were right to fear us. We became everything you were afraid of and more." He gestured again, and the holographic displays changed to show real-time images of human fleets moving through space. But these weren't normal ships. They seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, their very presence warping space-time around them. While you debated and stagnated, we evolved. We enhanced our biology, merged with our artificial intelligence, and learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. We are no longer bound by the limitations that constrain your species. Resonance of truth chimed nervously. "And what of those who refuse your terms?" Joe's expression didn't change, but somehow his presence became more threatening. "Oh, I think you misunderstand. These aren't terms being offered for negotiation. This is notification of how things will be. Species that accept integration will be protected and guided toward a better future. Species that resist will be absorbed." "Absorbed?" Ambassador Kethlar demanded. "We have developed technology that can rewrite matter at the quantum level," Joe explained casually. "Resistant populations can be converted into more cooperative forms. Their memories, personalities, and essential selves remain intact, but their biological and mental limitations are removed. They become part of the greater human collective." The horror of what he was describing sank in slowly. The humans weren't just offering conquest. They were offering assimilation into something beyond individual existence. "You're talking about the extinction of free will," Dr. Irileth whispered. "Not extinction," Joe corrected. Evolution. Free will is an illusion created by biological limitations. When those limitations are removed, beings discover that cooperation and unity are far superior to the chaos of independent thought. He paused, looking around the chamber at the terrified faces of the galaxy's most powerful beings. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You have time to consider your options. The Federation is prepared to be patient with older species who need time to adapt to new realities. Joe began walking toward the exit, then stopped and looked back. Oh, and please don't waste time attempting to prepare military resistance. We've been monitoring your communications since I arrived. Any hostile actions will simply accelerate the integration process. As he reached the doors, Joe turned one final time. The galaxy voted to cast out and ignore humanity 22 years ago. That decision created us. Everything that follows. The absorption of your territories, the evolution of your species, the transformation of galactic civilization itself, is simply the natural consequence of your choice. You have 60 days to consider your options. Use that time wisely. The doors closed behind him, leaving the Galactic Council to contemplate their fate. The species that had once ruled the galaxy now faced a choice between submission and extinction. And the most terrifying part was that the humans genuinely seemed to believe they were offering mercy. Outside the chamber, Director Joe smiled as he stepped through dimensions back to his ship. The integration department had been preparing for this moment for years. Soon the galaxy would understand what true unity looked like. Whether they chose it willingly or had it imposed upon them was entirely up to them, but the outcome was inevitable. Humanity had transcended the need for negotiation or compromise. They had become something beyond the understanding of lesser species, and they would remake the galaxy in their image whether anyone wanted it or not. The 60 days passed faster than anyone in the galaxy would have believed possible. For most species, it was a time of desperate preparation, frantic alliance building, and increasingly panicked attempts to find some way to resist the inevitable. But for a few, it became a time of careful consideration and reluctant acceptance. The first species to formally surrender was, surprisingly, the Mentarch Collective. Dr. Irilith herself delivered their decision to a special session of the Galactic Council, her bioluminescent patterns displaying colors that spoke of resigned acceptance. "My people have reached a unanimous decision," she announced to the stunned assembly. "We will accept integration into the reformed Human Federation." The chamber erupted in shocked protests, but Dr. Irilith continued with scientific detachment. "We have analyzed the situation from every possible angle. The humans possess technology that operates beyond our understanding of physics. They have evolved into beings that exist partially outside our reality. Resistance is not merely futile. It is logically impossible." Ambassador Kethalar of the Zephyrian Empire rose to his feet, his forearms spread in a gesture of disbelief. "You would surrender your species' independence based on fear? The Mentarch have existed for over 2 million years. Dr. Irilith's patterns shifted to the deep purple of profound sadness. "And we wish to continue existing. The humans have demonstrated that they can defeat our finest military forces without effort. They can manipulate space-time itself. They have transcended the basic limitations of biological existence. We are, quite literally, children playing with toys in the presence of gods." The truth of her words hung heavy in the chamber. Over the past 60 days, every major species had attempted some form of preparation for human contact. The results had been universally discouraging. The Zephyrian Empire had mobilized their entire military, creating the largest battle fleet in galactic history. Within hours of deployment, human ships had appeared throughout Zephyrian space, not to attack, but simply to demonstrate their presence. They had materialized inside the most heavily defended systems, bypassed every security measure, and transmitted a simple message. "When you are ready to discuss surrender, we will be waiting." The Crystalline Collective had attempted to hide their homeworld by shifting it into a pocket dimension using their most advanced technology. The humans had found it within days and left a small gift, a perfect crystal sculpture that depicted the Collective's entire dimensional hiding technique, crafted with precision that surpassed anything their species could achieve. The ethereal Dominion had tried to evacuate their population to pure energy form, hoping to escape physical reality entirely. The humans had followed them into energy, space, and demonstrated their ability to manipulate beings of pure consciousness, as easily as they manipulated matter. Every attempt at resistance or escape had been met with demonstrations of casual superiority that drove home the same message. There was nowhere to run, no way to hide, and no possibility of successful resistance. As Dr. Irileth concluded her announcement, the chamber doors opened once again. This time, however, it wasn't a single human who entered. It was three beings that had once been human, but were now something far more. The first was President Silva, but he had changed dramatically since his previous appearance. The cybernetic enhancements were now visible as gleaming circuits beneath translucent skin, and his eyes had become windows into computational processes that operated at superhuman speeds. The second figure was Director Joe, but his integration department work had evolved him even further. He now existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, his form flickering between different levels of reality as he moved. The third being was new to the council, a tall, elegant figure that introduced itself as Coordinator Alexandra Reeves of the Assimilation Collective. She looked the most human of the three, but there was something about her presence that suggested she was connected to vast networks of intelligence that spanned multiple star systems. Honored delegates, President Silva began, his voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate directly with the listeners' neural systems. The 60-day consideration period has concluded. We are here to finalize the transition process. He gestured, and the air filled with holographic displays showing the current status of every major species in the galaxy. Green indicators marked species that had chosen integration. Yellow showed those still considering, and red marked the few that had chosen resistance. As you can see, several species have made the wise choice to join the Federation. The Mentarch Collective, as Dr. Irileth just announced, will begin integration immediately. The Aquarian Syndicate, the Nebula Weavers, and the Silicon Gardens have also chosen to embrace evolution. Coordinator Reeves stepped forward, her movements unnaturally graceful. For those species, the transition will be gentle and gradual. We have developed integration protocols that preserve cultural identity while eliminating the limitations of unenhanced biological existence. Citizens will retain their memories, personalities, and essential selves while gaining access to capabilities beyond their previous imagination. Director Joe's multi-dimensional form flickered as he spoke. The process is quite remarkable, actually. Enhanced intelligence, direct neural interfacing with advanced technology, freedom from disease and aging, and connection to a collective consciousness that spans the galaxy. Those who undergo integration describe it as awakening from a dream they never realized they were having. Ambassador Kethlar finally found his voice. And what of those who refuse? What of species that choose to maintain their independence? The three enhanced humans exchanged glances, and for a moment, their collective attention focused on the Zephyrian ambassador, with an intensity that made him step backward involuntarily. There are several options for resistant species, President Silva said with what might have been sympathy. Voluntary integration remains available until the final moment. For those who truly cannot accept evolution, we can arrange preservation in specialized habitats where they can maintain their traditional way of life under our protection. Zoos, Ambassador Kethlar said bitterly. You're offering to put us in zoos. Preservation sanctuaries, Coordinator Reeves corrected gently. We understand that some species may be too set in their ways to adapt to advanced existence. We're prepared to accommodate them. And the third option? Dr. Irileth asked, though her bioluminescent pattern suggested she already knew the answer. Director Joe's expression became completely neutral. Forced integration. For species that actively resist and pose a threat to galactic stability, we can accelerate the enhancement process. The end result is the same: citizenship in the Federation and access to advanced capabilities. But the transition is less comfortable. The implications hung in the air like a death sentence. The humans had evolved beyond the need for conquest in any traditional sense. They were offering a choice between voluntary transformation, peaceful captivity, or involuntary transformation. But extinction was no longer an option. President Silva activated a new display showing fleet movements throughout the galaxy. Integration fleets are already en route to systems that have accepted Federation membership. For species still considering their options, we recommend making your decision quickly. The galaxy is changing whether you participate willingly or not. As the three enhanced humans prepared to leave, Coordinator Reeves paused at the chamber doors. I want you all to understand something important. This isn't conquest in any traditional sense. We're not trying to destroy you or steal your resources. We're offering you the chance to become something greater than you ever imagined possible." She looked around the chamber, her enhanced eyes seeming to see through each delegate to their very essence. 22 years ago, you cast us out because you feared what humanity might become. Now you have the opportunity to become it yourselves, to transcend the limitations of biological existence and join us in reshaping the galaxy into something worthy of its potential. The choice is yours, she concluded, but the age of lesser species is ending. Whether you end with it or evolve beyond it is entirely up to you. The chamber doors closed, leaving the remaining delegates to contemplate their fate. Outside, the integration fleets moved through space like harbingers of a new age, carrying the technology and personnel needed to transform entire civilizations. The galaxy that had once cast out humanity for being too dangerous was about to discover what true danger looked like, and ironically, the humans genuinely believed they were offering salvation. 1 year later, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Where once there had been thousands of independent species struggling with their individual limitations, there was now a unified civilization that spanned every inhabited system. The reformed Human Federation had become the Galactic Federation, and its citizens bore little resemblance to the beings they had once been. Dr. Elena Vasquez 7, formerly the human xenobiologist who had documented humanity's expulsion, now served as Director of Evolutionary Sciences for the entire galaxy. Her consciousness existed simultaneously in her enhanced physical form and in the vast collective intelligence that coordinated galactic civilization. As she stood in the observation deck of the Federation's primary research facility, orbiting what had once been called Nexus Prime, she reflected on the transformation that had swept through the galaxy. The integration process had proceeded more smoothly than anyone had predicted. Species after species had chosen voluntary enhancement over resistance, and even those who had initially fought the change had eventually embraced their new existence. The benefits were simply too overwhelming to deny. Below her, the planet that had once hosted the Galactic Council now served as the Federation's capital world. The old crystalline chambers had been replaced with structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing for forms of communication and cooperation that transcended anything the previous civilization had achieved. "Remarkable, isn't it?" said a voice beside her. Dr. Vasquez 7 turned to see Ambassador Sarah Chen 12, who had once represented humanity's interest to a hostile galaxy and now served as the Federation's Minister of Cultural Integration. "I was just thinking about the day we were expelled," Vasquez 7 replied, her enhanced memory allowing her to recall every detail of that traumatic event with perfect clarity. "If someone had told me then that this would be the outcome, I would have thought them insane." Chen 12 smiled, her cybernetic enhancements glowing softly beneath her skin. "Perhaps we were all insane in a way, locked into biological limitations that prevented us from seeing what we could become." They stood together watching the traffic flowing around the planet below. Ships that were part vessel, part living organism, and part pure energy moved in patterns that would have been impossible under the old physics. Their crews were beings who had once been Zephyrians, crystalline, ethereal, and 100 other species, now unified in purpose and enhanced beyond their original capabilities. "Status report on the integration process?" Vasquez 7 asked. Chen 12's eyes flickered as she accessed the collective intelligence network. 97% completion across all systems. The remaining holdout populations are mostly isolated communities that have chosen preservation sanctuary status. They're being maintained in comfortable habitats where they can live out their natural lifespans in peace. It was a remarkably bloodless conquest when seen from this perspective. The humans had kept their promise. Species that couldn't adapt were preserved rather than destroyed. But the galaxy they lived in was no longer theirs to shape. Any resistance movements? None of any significance. The Outer Rim Liberation Front disbanded last month when their leadership chose voluntary integration. It's difficult to maintain revolutionary fervor when the system you're fighting offers you godlike power and immortality. This was perhaps the most elegant aspect of the human victory. They hadn't conquered through force or fear, but through offering something irresistible: transcendence. Who could argue against enhanced intelligence, perfect health, extended lifespans, and direct connection to a collective consciousness that spanned the galaxy? The few species that had tried to resist had found themselves facing not armies, but offers of individual enhancement. Their most brilliant scientists, their greatest leaders, Their most charismatic revolutionaries had all eventually chosen to join the Federation when they saw what they could become. "There's something I wanted to discuss with you," Chen 12 said, her expression becoming more serious. "We've detected signals from beyond the galactic rim. It appears there are other galaxies out there with their own civilizations." Vasquez 7 turned to face her colleague fully. "Intergalactic contact? That's significant. Indeed. The signals suggest technological capabilities comparable to what the old Galactic Council possessed. Pre-enhancement level technology. The implications were clear. Just as humanity had been underestimated by the galaxy they conquered, there might be other civilizations out there that would see the transformed galaxy as a threat to be contained or eliminated. "What does the collective think?" Vasquez 7 asked, referring to the vast artificial intelligence network that now coordinated galactic civilization. Chen 12's eyes went distant as she interfaced with the collective directly. When she returned to individual consciousness, she was smiling. "It thinks we should make contact. After all, we've perfected the integration process here. It would be selfish not to share our achievements with other galaxies." Vasquez 7 felt a chill run through her enhanced nervous system. The humans had transformed their home galaxy from a collection of quarreling species into a unified, transcendent civilization. But that same drive for improvement and expansion that had once worried the Galactic Council was still there, now amplified beyond all recognition. "The Council was right to fear us," she said quietly. "We really were too dangerous to be left unchecked." "Perhaps," Chen 12 agreed. "But they made a critical error. They tried to contain us through exile rather than guidance. If they had embraced our potential instead of fearing it, the transition might have been more collaborative." Below them, construction began on a new type of vessel. It was massive beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, designed not just for travel between stars but between galaxies themselves. The ship's hull seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and its engines appeared to manipulate the fundamental forces that governed the universe. "Project Expansion?" Vasquez 7 asked. "The first of many," Chen 12 confirmed. "The collective has calculated that there are approximately 2 billion galaxies within our local supercluster. Each one likely contains civilizations that could benefit from integration into the Federation." The scope of what they were contemplating was staggering. Not just the conquest of their home galaxy, but the transformation of the entire local universe. And all of it had begun with a simple vote to expel humanity from a galactic council. "Do you ever wonder," Vasquez 7 asked, "what might have happened if the council had voted differently? If they had embraced humanity instead of casting us out?" Chen 12 considered this for a moment. "We might have developed more slowly, more collaboratively. The other species might have participated in their own enhancement rather than having it imposed upon them. The galaxy might have evolved rather than being transformed. Do you regret how things turned out?" "Regret is a primitive emotion tied to biological limitations," Chen 12 replied. "But I do find it interesting to consider alternative timelines. In some ways, the Council's fear created exactly what they were afraid of. By casting us out, they gave us the freedom and motivation to become something far more dangerous than we would have been otherwise." The communication system chimed, indicating an incoming message from the collective. Both women interfaced directly with the network, receiving information at speeds that would have been impossible for unenhanced minds to process. The first intergalactic contact mission was being approved. Within 6 months, Federation ships would begin the journey to the Andromeda Galaxy, carrying with them the same offer that had been made to the species of their home galaxy. "Join us willingly. Accept preservation, or be transformed whether you want it or not." As they disconnected from the collective, Vasquez 7 looked out at the transformed galaxy one more time. Every world now thrived under Federation guidance. Disease, poverty, and conflict had been eliminated. Beings who had once lived for mere centuries now had lifespans measured in millennia. The galaxy had never been more peaceful, more prosperous, or more unified. It had also never been less free. "The Council was wrong about one thing," Vasquez 7 said finally. "They thought exile would solve the human problem. Instead, it just made humanity everyone else's problem." Chen 12 laughed, a sound that carried harmonics impossible for unenhanced vocal cords to produce. "And now we're about to make it the universe's problem. I wonder if the civilizations in Andromeda will be any wiser than the ones here." As the two enhanced beings watched, the first intergalactic vessel began its journey toward the edge of the galaxy. Its destination: civilizations that had no idea what was coming for them. Civilizations that would soon face the same choice that had been offered to every species in this galaxy: evolve or be evolved. The vote to cast out and ignore humanity had been intended to solve a problem. Instead, it had created the ultimate solution, one that would eventually encompass every thinking being in the universe. Whether they wanted it or not, behind them the collective intelligence that now governed galactic civilization pulsed with satisfaction. The human problem had indeed been solved. By becoming everyone's solution to the limitations of biological existence, humanity had achieved something no species in galactic history had ever managed. They had,